My research focus is forest resilience. Resilience can be defined as the ability of a forest to reorganize and recover after disturbance and maintain similar function and structure. Tropical forests are my research domain. This is why I share my time between Ghent University on the one hand and the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Tervuren on the other hand. Tropical forests are among the most enigmatic ecosystems in the world. They harbor enormous biodiversity, they have enormous carbon stocks, they take up enormous amounts of carbon from the atmosphere, but we don't know much about how exactly they function. Me and my colleagues are monitoring tropical tree growth and forest resilience using an old school but very efficient technique. We simply measure the diameter of trees. However, we do this on millions of trees all over the tropics. All these trees are grouped in so-called permanent inventory plots, covering about 1 hectare to 10 hectares or even much bigger. Every tree in the plot carries an aluminium number tag, so that we can easily relocate them. And the diameter is always remeasured over and over again on exactly the same spot, which is indicated with paint on the tree. Typically, we remeasure the trees every 2 to 4 years, covering in the end many years, in some cases even many decades. We found out that little trees like this one can easily reach 300 years old and even more, and they easily outcompete the mastodons like the massive tree in the back in terms of age. As such, we found out that the long-term carbon capital of a rainforest does not necessarily reside in the big emergent trees in the back, but rather in small trees hidden beneath the canopy. We also show that tropical forests are still huge carbon reservoirs. They store massive amounts of carbon in the big trees, like the big individual, the massive individual in the back. However, their capacity to absorb more carbon from the atmosphere, their carbon sink capacity, is limited. This worrying discovery shows that we need to dig deeper into how forests function. To do that, I will take a step back in time. Now, tropical forest trees, and especially those massive individuals that we find in Congo, have been our planet's forest bodybuilders for billions of years in the past. One of the things I want to do as a professor in tropical forest ecology is try to entangle how these tropical forest bodybuilders responded to climate change in the past. I'm doing this by looking at charcoal. Charcoal can be found in almost any soil in the tropics. We are excavating soil profiles next to almost all our permanent inventory plots I have been talking about before. Now, after we find this charcoal, we bring it to the lab, and the first thing that we do is radiocarbonate it. Radiocarbonates give a good idea of the age of the charcoal. This age can vary from a few hundred years to a few thousand years, and in some cases a few tens of thousands of years. The next thing that we do with the charcoal is identify to which species the charcoal belonged. We can do this because the anatomy, the cell structures, are very well preserved in charcoal. We can still see parenchyma cells, we can still see vessels, we can see all kinds of structures that are also present in wood and that are maintained in the charcoal. So we are describing this anatomy, and we compare the anatomy of charcoal with the anatomy of wood from the reference specimens that are stored in the Royal Museum for Central Africa, where we manage one of the largest collections of reference wood samples in the world. By doing this, we can identify to which species the charcoal belongs, and we can actually identify how the tropical forest has been changing species composition over time. As such, our preliminary results show that the bodybuilders of today were not necessarily the dominant species in the past. We actually found out that over the last 1,000 years, forest composition in the Congo Basin changed enormously. This shows that these forests are very resilient and are able to deal with climate change by changing their species composition. I am planning a lot of field work within the rainforest. However, I cannot do this alone. That is why I invest in a team of collaborators. And I especially invest in finding local collaborators and building up a team of Congolese PhD students, postdocs and assistants. And I hope that one day the research of these PhD students will help protect the rainforest, so that the rainforest in turn will continue to protect the planet.